We all use cannabis. Cannabis is the safest substance ever. Nobody died because of it. And when you see 12, 15-year-old kid cured with brain cancer, it gives you some more momentum to go on. It's really funny. We can regulate, nuclear weapons and whatever, but we are not able to rationally regulate one plant. Unnecessary damage done to the people and lost 70 years. Families were ruined. If you go to jail, you lose your job, you lose your business. They can take your kid away for what? For 2 joints?
Introduce yourself. What do you do?
I try to make some innovative research on the cannabis field.
How did you start? Why?
How it started generally, or how I started with this project?
How you started generally and with this project?
My, let's say, professional or business cannabis started back in 2014 when I organized the first scientific conference. That was the first real touch with cannabis as a medicine and this industry which we want to represent now. But of course I started to know cannabis 49 years ago in the high school, so I'm quite a long history together with cannabis. But nowadays, since I got involved in some research in the Faculty of Health Sciences in Ljubljana and some other institutions, opportunity came out to send some seeds to space to see if there will be any genetic changes after we bring them back to Earth. I don't know how wise, you always go with the flow and you see where you come.
So what was the flow that made you organize this conference, and where was it?
As I said, I started actually starting a grow shop in very rural area in Slovenia back in 2007. And of course, if you open the grow shop in 2007 in Murska Sobota or in the rural area of Slovenia, you have to know that you will face some challenges, especially with the law, So after they imprisoned me and all the shit about this story, I'm stubborn, I'm Capricorn, I'm stubborn. So when I get out, I just organized the first conference together with Rick. Rick Simpson should actually organize, but they couldn't get the whole organization under the roof. So I took over and I organized it in Ljubljana.
Tell me about your prison time. What happened?
I had few plants, let's say a lot of plants in my garden. In Slovenia, there is a very big difference between city and rural area regarding how they treat cannabis. So they put me in investigation prison, temporary for 3 months. And those were very interesting days since I started the hunger strike and all this. But everything is good for something, so that was the most fruitful time for cannabis in Slovenia regarding media, because the story was everywhere, in newspapers, on television, and everywhere. On the same year, I organized another conference back in 2014 regarding the law and human rights, also in Slovenia. And then in 2014, I organized some conferences in Belgrade and Skopje, and so the snowball started to roll, And since I was on most of the cannabis conferences in Europe, I started to think about how to bring this cannabis knowledge, a bit more. And through my colleague in faculty with Roman, we started to organize seminaries and education for doctors and nurses. It is actually the first official education in Slovenia and one of the first in Europe. And even the conference back in 2019 was official seminar recognized by Medical Chamber of Slovenia. So that was the first step. And then you go around, you meet people, new opportunities. And a few years ago, we made some common project with Hungarian company, Genoplant, for this analyzer. And because Bence was involved in some space project before, there was an opportunity to send some seeds to space and to retrieve them to make some biological, experiments. And here we are.
That's called struggle, right? So what makes it worth it?
The most satisfying thing is when you have good feedback from your patients. So this is most important thing. This is what gives you the momentum to go on.
What kind of patient?
Any, mostly cancer patients, autoimmune diseases, epilepsy, Alzheimer, Parkinson's. But I work mostly with cancer patients. It's not the cannabis is not panacea. It doesn't help everybody on the same way, but still is very powerful medicine. And when you see the 10 or 12, 15-year-old kid cured with brain cancer, then it gives you some more momentum to go on.
What is the most difficult part working this way?
Constant struggling with the authorities, let's put it that way. It's always something, And even if I wanted to, I also have a founded institute, a lab on the Faculty of Health Sciences. And I'm now struggling from January to import officially. I could smuggle it, but I didn't want to. Officially 9 samples from Iceland, and today we are almost May, so 4 months, and I couldn't get those samples. So, the struggle with bureaucratic stupidities, with all those obstacles, because it's just a plant. And now we are just before accepting or introducing new law in Slovenia, and I'm afraid it will not be better, but it's a bit worse because there are even more bureaucratic obstacles. It should be way easier to research any plant, not just cannabis, because the research doesn't mean trafficking. Research doesn't mean any bad impact on the social or health issues among the general populations. But I think fear has too big eyes, and we make those obstacles by ourselves. And too many people are suffering because of this idiotisms.
So if you can just snap your finger and change one thing, what would it be?
To change public opinion about cannabis based on the misinformation and bad propaganda in the last 70 years. Because this is the only obstacles, switch in the head. But it's not that easy. 70 years of propaganda brought this. I can see this in Slovenia when we organize seminaries for doctors and nurses. We have maybe 30, 40 nurses in one seminar, and maybe one or not even one doctor or physician, let's put it that way. So, until even physicians don't realize that they need to have a click in their heads, it will not be available for patients.
How to change it?
Education. Just education, and I mean the real world education, not the politically correct education.
For example, what does the real education look like?
Let science speak about cannabis, not the politicians and the bureaucrats. We know that cannabis is the safest substance ever. Nobody died because of it. We all use cannabis, Even in Slovenia, the use among the adult population is, I think, way over 20%, because on the referendum it was like 52% in favor of personal use. So I think this will be the biggest challenge. But as you see in Germany, if there is political will, all those stigma, and it can be changed overnight, because you just need a little bit of counter propaganda to those, and because it's the biggest hypocrisy ever. You can give people chemotherapy, you can give them all chemicals possible, but not the cannabis. I really don't know the real reason. I'm sure it's not just the pharma lobby. It must be something else as well. Maybe we want to be more Pope than Pope itself. You know what I mean? I see this now in Slovenia with the new law, where actually we wrote the unnecessary obstacles in the law. There should not be any obstacles. Now, under the new law, even the cooperation between two laboratories can be trafficking of cannabis, which is really stupid. If I send 2 grams of cannabis probe to another laboratory to check, my work in our laboratory, cross-checking, it can be a criminal offense if I don't have all the papyrology for each and every sample. But in science, this is not doable, it's not sustainable. Now I'm struggling 4 months with 9 samples. How much money is this? How many working hours? To whom should I charge this to be profitable as a company or institute or laboratory, So yeah, many obstacles.
So what do you do besides working in cannabis and about cannabis?
Professionally, private.
Anything where you're not.
So for the last 20 years, professionally, cannabis is my preoccupation in any way. And otherwise, I'm enjoying in my small farm, I'm 3 to 4 days working intensively with patients and in Ljubljana and in laboratory or whatever. And then 3 or 4 days in a week, I'm with my animals on my little farm.
What animals?
I have many. I have chickens, I have a lot of cats, I have a dog, I have hedgehogs, I have crows, I have fish pond, and yeah, a lot of things.
So what is your typical day like?
At home or at work?
At work.
7 to 9 o'clock coffee and crosswords and Sudoku. And then it started work with the patients, preparing samples for the laboratory, bureaucratic things, correspondency. And I can never actually plan what I will do because I never know who will call me in 5 minutes. And I always adjust my time to sick people. They're first and then everything else. Even the tax office or police, they have to wait until I...
What's your relationship with police?
Police is not bad general, but you have, I don't want to insult, police, but yeah, they should use a little bit more what they have in their heads, like brain, because you can really not criminally charge people, sick people in the 4th stage of, glioblastoma to grow for themselves. Where is here the justice or, whatever. This is really not the police work. It's just harassing people for nothing. And it doesn't contribute to the good image of police, especially in my eyes.
Is there one patient that you remember the most?
The youngest patient from Rijeka, it was back in 2010 or 11. She was born in August and diagnosed with brain cancer in December with 3.5 months. And today she is 14.
What makes you happy?
Hard to say. Happy is satisfied. Happy is deep one. No, it makes me especially very, if I get good feedback from the patients, especially young patients. I have now just received a message from Vienna from the lady, who used your notes. The last MRI was still clear and the Helena is doing perfect. So these are bright moments.
Yeah.
When you're snaking.
Of course. Yeah, I told you, I smoke cannabis from my 13th.
So how did it start? How did you even get cannabis when you were 13?
No, the cannabis was actually everywhere. When I was 13, it was very long ago. It's 70s, And it wasn't that stigmatized then after let's say, when we got independent and Slovenia adopted the new drug law and also about cannabis. Then the repression really started. When I studied in Ljubljana, nobody asked me about cannabis. Nobody asked me if I smoked outside. It wasn't very publicly, but nobody bothered you. But when they accepted the new law with all the fines and everything, then it started the real repression on the cannabis users. Because cannabis use and cannabis possession was never a criminal offense in Slovenia.
The trafficking was.
But for the police and prosecutors, it's the easy money, the money without the, how you call, nautica. You know what I mean? Not to dig for whatever. So this was the big push why I started all this activism and to expose all the bullshit around the cannabis and consequences, of course, for the people. And it's still going on, you know, because in Slovenia, if you are prosecuted for the cannabis use, criminal. You cannot get a public job. You lose your driver's license. They can take your kid away because you are a drug addict. Yeah, it's such idiotism. And this is what we should fix, because we all know now for 30 years that cannabis is good because of endocannabinoid system and everything. And nothing happened. No changes, you know. Okay, no Germany, Malta, Luxembourg and others. But generally, still in Europe, it's very stigmatized issue, everything about cannabis. Even in Holland, they don't know how to regulate it. It's really funny. We can regulate, nuclear weapons and whatever, but we are not able to rationally regulate one plant.
What is it about cannabis that most people get it wrong?
First thing, because it's illicit drug. You know, what is illicit drug? We have like 500 different drugs on the illicit drug list, from fentanyl, and it's already in the bad basket. And when the reporters are reporting, you know, that somebody was under influence, they never write under which influence, just under influence of drugs. But you have cannabis, you have cocaine, you have heroin, you have fentanyl, you have, many different drugs which are working differently to the body and different consequences. Like you would put juice and whiskey and everything in the one basket, and then also juice will be bad. So the first is that it's really this bad connotation, and even among users, they have some kind of self-censorship with cannabis. I don't smoke in the public, I don't do this, I don't do that. So I hope this will change. As you see here in Germany, nobody gives a shit anymore about cannabis or whatever.
So what is one thing that you think people should be talking about, but no one is talking about?
About the unnecessary damage done to the people in the last 70 years. Because this is the biggest damage. The families were ruined. If you go to jail, you lose your job, you lose your business for what? For 2 joints? This is really, bad idiotism and violation of human rights, of course.
How should the future be?
Free.
That's it?
Good?
Yeah.
Good.
Nice. Do you like it?
I do not.
You don't? Come on. You have a feeling, right?
It's good. Borut? Good. Sure.